Welcome to Executive Edge interview series. I am Nora Paxton, CEO coach, leadership strategist, and advisor to founders and senior executive. I help leaders think bigger, lead more intentionally, and create lasting organizational impact. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce a guest whose work challenges one of the most persistent myths in leadership, that strength and humanity are somehow at odds. Aaron Mikulsky is the CEO of L.O.V.E. to Lead Consulting Services and the author of Love to Lead. Aaron's philosophy centers on leading with love, putting the kind back in humankind, and intentionally focusing on the human side of leadership. What makes Aaron's work especially compelling is that he lives at the intersection of heart and execution. He advises organizations facing real business challenges, growing sales, expanding distribution strategy, increasing ease of doing business, building innovation and efficient operation, and developing executives who can lead with both clarity and care. This isn't leadership theory. It's leadership that scales people, performance, and culture. Aaron, welcome. I'm really glad to have you here.
Wow, thank you, Nora. That was wonderful. I couldn't have summed up my career and what I do better than you did. It's very humbling. Thank you.
You're welcome. So your book, Love to Lead, immediately stood out to me because it challenges a false narrative I see all the time in leadership, that love and accountability somehow sit on opposite ends of the spectrum. So before we get into the book, I want to ground people in you. What led you to write Love to Lead? Was there a moment, experience, or realization that made you say, this is the leadership conversation we're missing?
So I briefly articulate the genesis of that in the introduction in my book, and really it came down to, in all the years in the companies that I've worked in corporate America, my own personal experience of leadership, and I found more times than not the type of leader I didn't want to become and the type of leadership I didn't want to be subjected to. So unfortunately, I probably worked with more poor leaders throughout my career than good leaders. So it was really a topic I wanted to write about for a long time. Reading on average a book a week for 20, 25 years on the topic, I decided, you know what, I want to synthesize it all down to what I think leadership is, what leadership isn't, and rooted in all that research as well as my personal experience, and really make it easy to digest for someone, especially in today's world with very short attention spans. We don't take a lot of time to read, and really make it so someone could sit down in one quick flight, put it in their briefcase, their backpack, their purse, pull it out, and really get some quick, insightful ideas.
Yeah. And one of the things I appreciate about your work is that it really doesn't stay theoretical. It's grounded in lived leadership. So thank you for sharing your message. So when leaders hear the word love in the workplace, some immediately get uncomfortable, right? So how do you define love in leadership, and just as importantly, what it is not?
Yeah, so especially in corporate America, publicly traded companies, it typically, that word isn't thrown around a lot unless there's like an HR issue going on with two employees, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
But love is really my one word definition of leadership, because I believe leadership is caring for and nurturing other human beings. And the best leaders focus on developing other leaders. It's not all about them. It's about the people that they're entrusted to lead. And there's no one more impactful in an employee's career than their direct boss. So to me, it's more, and that's why I talk a lot about servant leadership, right? It's moving from the me focus to the we focus. And I feel like the leaders that I've looked up to my entire career are ones who I feel truly care about me as a human being, that want me to excel, that want me to grow, that want me to advance in my career. and they're willing to put in time to help me get there. So I decided after a lot of thought that if there's one word to define leadership is really love. And then I took the love and made it into an acronym, L-O-V-E, and we can talk about that later if you want.
Yeah. So, as a follow-up question, so where do you see leaders misunderstanding or misusing this idea today?
Oh, they may think it's soft, right? That love has to do with being nice to everyone, or it equals kindness. Um, and it may people may think, well, that if you lead with love, you're not holding people accountable.
Mm.
And I think that's anything but the truth. I think showing care for another person is having difficult conversations with them. It's giving them affirmation, but also giving them that constructive feedback in a timely manner when they need it. So if you truly love someone, you are holding them accountable. You need to hold them accountable. And sometimes that means that that person isn't the right person for that role. And maybe the conversation is that person isn't the right person for the organization. Maybe it's just not a good cultural fit, but it's loving them enough to have those conversations with the person as a human being to discuss what may be a better option or a better fit.
Yeah. Yes, and this distinction matters because when love is misunderstood, leaders either avoid it or weaponize it. So this leads to my third question for you. One of the strongest themes in your book is that loving leaders don't lower standards, they raise them. So, how do you help leaders hold people accountable, since you mentioned accountability, without drifting into control, fear, or avoidance?
Yeah, I really think, again, the importance of how we communicate with people is so critical. They always say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Well, I think it's both. It's certainly what you say and it's how you say it. But if you think of yourself as just like you and I, Nora, who are coaches, but if any person who's responsible for any other people, forget about the label, supervisor, manager, vice president, senior vice president, forget about that for a second. If you're responsible for a team, you should be thinking of yourself as a coach, as a mentor, as a trusted advisor, as a champion for your people, an advocate. And that means you can be tough and tender, right? I think of the sports analogy with some basketball coaches, John Wooden of UCLA, who is admired by so many. There's the coach of the Chicago Bulls and the Lakers, Phil Jackson, who had this Zen-like aura about him, leading Michael Jordan, leading, coaching Kobe Bryant, two of the best to ever play the game. But he was known for being tough and tender. He got to know his players at a personal level. He uniquely changed his communication to adapt to the individuals. But yet he was very tough on them. He was very hard on his players. He had very high expectations. And that's a very different leadership mindset than some of the basketball coaches of old, such as the Phil Knights of the world, the Pat Rileys. It's just a different style. But I think as we evolved as a culture, people tend to gravitate towards more of the lovable leader who's tough and tender and knowing when to be tender and knowing when to be tough.
Yeah. So, for our audience here, what does loving accountability actually sound like in a real conversation?
Um, Again, it takes time to form relationships, right? And especially if you're a new leader in a new team or building a team, to build that trust and to build that rapport is all about you as a leader showing vulnerability, right? And in order to show vulnerability, that takes courage. And I see a lot of leaders from my past experience, they don't want to show any vulnerability. They don't want to show any weakness. They have this armor that's up. And it's really hard, I think, to connect with people when they're not willing to step out. They're not willing to go first. But I think as a leader, once you can demonstrate and lead by example and model the way, you'll be amazed how other people will open up as well. And
Yeah.
I just think it's a lot more honest relationship. It's a lot more authentic relationship. So, it's not just about business. I truly believe that you need to get to know people and learn about what they're passionate about, what their strengths are, what their core beliefs are, learn about their family, ask about their family, seem interested, truly interested in other people. And, the relationship is more than just whatever their performance review, performance objectives say. And it's all about business. I think that's very cold and callous. And
Mhm.
I feel like you can be a much more effective leader when you can balance the two. It's about purpose and profit. It's not just about profit.
Yeah. And yes, and that balance between tough and tender, like you said, or clarity and care is really where a lot of leaders either freeze or overcorrect. Um, so let's talk about your coaching philosophy here for a bit. Your coaching work is clearly built on the principle in the book, right? What are the one or two core coachings belief that you return to again and again with leaders?
I think the biggest one that I find, and this is the biggest struggle individuals have, is when we start out. And the first probably 5 chapters in my book talk about this. You, we need to be more self-aware, right? Know thyself. And a lot of life is trying to get a better understanding of who we truly are. And many of us just haven't taken the time to truly think and ponder that. We haven't gotten honest feedback from those closest, to us, or we're not accepting of the feedback. We get defensive um, when we hear things that we don't want to hear. But as a coach, it's my job to open them up, to open their eyes up, to open their hearts up, to hear maybe some things that they don't want to hear, to uncover some of those blind spots that are maybe inhibiting them and holding them back. But
Yeah.
we spend a lot of time just on a lot of that self-reflection work, almost putting on my psychologist hat, my therapist hat, even though I'm not a licensed therapist. But there is a lot of life coaching, a lot of therapeutic questioning and techniques that I think the best business coaches have to use, because the whole human mind is based on psychology, how we relate to other people. That's a sociology. So if we're not thinking about that and trying to grab that out of people to truly get that understanding and help them become more understood, I think I think a lot of coaches could skip that part,
Yeah.
and then they wonder why they're constantly just having the same problems over and over and over again.
Yeah. So, from your perspective and your experience, when leaders struggle, what's usually underneath it? Skill gap, fear, identity, or something else?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is they don't know what they don't know. Is a lot. Sometimes they have imposter syndrome. They're in way over their head. You and I have heard the term it's lonely at the top. Right? When you're a business owner, CEO, president, you may report to the chairman of the board. You may report to the lead investor. But there's things that you may not want to have an open conversation with that person about.
Mhm.
And who else do they turn to? And sometimes they're and maybe their spouse, sometimes their spouse isn't in their domain and they're not a good sounding board. And that's why I think there's huge value in having an independent third party coach, advisor, like someone like yourself, myself, that we're just there to listen. We're there to kind of make them question their thinking, test their assumptions, and just become better thinkers, better business people, better human beings, better leaders. But when you think about it, every great musician in the world has had a coach. Every great professional athlete in the world has a coach. Well, most of them have many coaches. But you look in like the corporate world and the business world, there's very few people, a small percentage, actually employ the expertise of having a one-on-one coach. And I think that's a major gap. And I still haven't found the answer to that. I think part of it's hubris. Sometimes people say they don't have the time. Some people say they don't want to spend the money. But yet, all these other professions, if you want to be the best of the best, you hire and you pay for a coach.
Yeah.
So again, no one's given me a rational explanation of why more business leaders, business executives, all don't have coaches.
Yeah.
I'm baffled by it.
Yeah, I agree. So, and as you know, that internal work really shows up externally, whether leaders realize it or not. So, let's talk about hard truth. Based on your experience, Aaron, what's one leadership behavior that looks loving on the surface, but actually holds team back?
Well, I think a common one, and this is a certain personality of a leader, is they're afraid of having the constructive conversations. They're afraid of telling their employees what things they don't want to hear. And yet you see them talk bad about that person to everyone else, but they're afraid to, maybe they're a people pleaser, maybe they're just afraid of conflict. But we're all adults in the room. And again, it comes back to what I think, and one of the four adages I mentioned at the end of my book is the golden rule. And the golden rule goes beyond religious affiliation. It's really a tried and true principle that for the most part, we should treat others the way we want to be treated. Now, that's not saying we should treat everyone the way we want to be treated, because we're all different, right? So maybe it's called the platinum rule instead of the golden rule, because we need to be adaptable and agile. But if we were all to live by that adage day in and day out, the world would be such a better place. It would be a beautiful place. And if we could stop with that me first attitude and think about other people, right? Think about serving people. It is a opportunity, it is a responsibility, it is an obligation if we are put in a leadership position, influencing so many different people's lives, to do what's best for the organization first, to your people second, and then think about your own career. My personal experience, way too often, it's flipped around. Leaders think about their own self-interest first. How do they move up? How do they, with their great ambitious minds, get promoted, move on, despite of what that may do to their employees, despite the results that could have on the organization. And I think that's one of the biggest issues in any organization, when someone is self-serving first.
Yeah. So speaking about impact, so what's the cost to the team or the organization, as a matter of fact, when leaders avoid that truth?
Well, I think the biggest one is you can create a culture of fear. It can turn into a toxic culture. I don't know one company, one organization out there, at least that I've been talking to, that isn't talking about innovation. right? If I'm in a room of 1,000 people and I say, who needs their people to be more innovative? Like every hand will go up. Who needs to be, more creative in their decision making? All the hands go up. And yet when you start asking about their incentive system, when you ask about their systems and processes, when you ask about how they judge success of their projects, when you talk about how they react when things don't go as planned, well, their behaviors don't coincide with creating innovation and creative cultures
Yeah.
because they penalize people whenever they make a mistake. So they don't view mistakes as learning opportunities for growth. They view mistakes as a failure and then penalize people for it.
Yeah. And that's where leadership becomes less about intention and more about impact. So for leaders that are listening right now who wants to lead with more humanity and strength, what's one shift they can make this week?
Yeah, I would say again, it goes back to the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Of treat people the way you would want to be treated. And I think about it. Who doesn't want to be treated with dignity? Who doesn't want to be treated with respect? Who doesn't want to be talking to in an honest manner? Versus who wants to hear things that they only want to hear? Who wants everything sugar coated? Who wants um, to be dehumanized? Who wants to be talked down to? Who wants to made feel like they're a constant failure? It's that simple, right? It's that simple. Like if you don't want to be treated a certain way, well, you probably should stop treating others that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So before we wrap, I want to come back to the heart of your message, Aaron. When leadership finish, when leaders finish love to lead, what do what do you hope those changes about how they see themselves as leaders?
Yeah. So besides everything we've already talked about, one thing we didn't do is talk about the LOVE acronym. So really, I feel like the four most important elements of being an effective leader have to do with you have to be a learning leader. So the L is for learning, constant in that growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. You're setting the example of in today's fast-paced world where everything's changing and everyone's innovating. If you stop learning, if your organization stops learning, the competition that isn't stopped learning, they're going to bypass you really quickly. So to me, you're the chief teacher. You're the chief learning officer, really, at that organization. The O is for optimism. So leaders need to be optimistic. It's having that can-do mindset of, yep, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of challenges out there. This may seem unsurmountable right now, but if people see the leader doesn't think that they could overcome those things, do you think they're going to overcome those things? Probably not. So to me, it's really having that can-do um, attitude, which we all know that's contagious within organizations. There aren't many statues ever erected for a pessimist.
Mm-hmm.
So you think about the best leaders out there, typically extreme optimists. And then the V in love is vision with values. Every
Yeah.
effective leader is rooted in their core values, and those values drive the vision. That vision should inspire people to progress, to march forward, and and then E is for engagement. So it's hard to lead and create an inspiring vision if you're not engaging people, if you're not communicating effectively, if you're not religious about it, if you're not the chief storyteller, if you're not extremely clear in the direction and making it compelling, making it exciting. So people want to come to work because it's a great cause. Again, it's more purpose over profit, not neglecting the profit, but balancing and understanding, if we're all in pursuit of this great purpose, the profit will follow. So to me, those are four key elements that if you don't have all four, I think you're not going to be as effective as you can and should be.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Aaron. So this has been a really meaningful conversation. And so what stand out to me most is how clear you articulate that leading with love is not about being self. It's about being intentional, courageous, and deeply accountable. And your work reminds us that result and humanity aren't competing forces, like you mentioned. And when leaders focus on the human side of humankind, they create clarity, they create trust and momentum. And that's what ultimately drives performance. So thank you for this leadership that you model, the work that you do with organization, and for sharing your perspective with us today.
Thank you, Nora. I appreciate the opportunity, and I also respect what you do very much. And thank you for your friendship and your mentorship as well.
Oh, thank you. It means the world. So for those listening, I encourage you to check out Aaron's book, Love to Lead, and learn more about his work through Love to Lead Consulting Services if this conversation resonates with you. Aaron, thank you. Thank you again. It's been a pleasure. And looking forward to our next time together.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Everyone go lead with love.
Thank you, Baz. Bye.